and to the left. And feeling the contact of the back of your head on the ground, and that sort of shifting contact of the back of your head as you let your head roll to the right and to the left. So there's the feeling of allowing the neck to ease out. And there's also this feeling of we might become more aware of all the sort of maybe lumps and bumps around the back of our skull. Or it might feel very smooth as our head rolls from side to side. And from rolling your head once or twice more in each direction, then find a place where you can settle the back of your head on the floor. Hi, Sarah. Very nice to see you. We've just started lying down, so taking it easy. Everyone's muted, so I can't hear you. I can't. Oh, I've unmuted you for a moment. You okay? Where are you?
I'm back home now.
That
link wouldn't let me get in. That's why I'm late. So I'm just apologising.
Okay, it's lovely you're here. So really nice to see you. I'm going to mute you again. And yes, lie down. Take it easy. We're going to go slowly. So yes, so Sarah, we were just rolling our heads from side to side and then settling them in the centre. So if you're still rolling your head, settle it down. And Sarah, if you want to roll your head, if you'd like to do that a little bit, then please do so. And then if your legs are long, I think you've all got your knees bent, which is great, because I'd like you to be in that position where your knees are bent and your feet are standing on the floor. And you can start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. So this simple, familiar movement, it just perhaps helps us to get in touch with how we're feeling around the lower part of our body, how we're feeling around the back of the pelvis, into perhaps around the lower back, to the sides of the body. I'm sorry, I've got a bit of hay fever, so hopefully it will calm down in a moment. That's it. So just carry on a few more times, and everything. So probably helpful for everything we do today in a sort of lazy, languid way. Good. So a few more times, letting the knees tilt to the right and to the left. And so one of the nice things about this weather is we can feel, I think, particularly around sort of into the hip joints, and yeah, so sort of into the thigh muscles. Everything here can maybe feel a bit looser than it does sometimes. So from here, what I'd like you to do next is, and it's no great change, is just the next time you come back to the center with your knees, take your feet a bit wider apart. So your feet are as wide as the narrow edge of your mat. And you can then let your knees tilt here to the right and to the left. Good, that's very nice. And so just and from here, from letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left, then what you could do, if it feels that would be a nice thing to do, is let your knees come all the way down to one side. And if you have a cushion to hand, if one knee's hovering and you have a cushion to hand, you can always slide a cushion under one of your knees. You might be quite happy to just leave your legs heavy, so letting both legs drop down to the floor on one side. And then you can let your head roll in the opposite direction. And just have a few breaths here. And of course, if it doesn't feel comfortable to come into this, I suppose, this sort of supine twist, this floor twist, then come back to the rocking of your knees. But if this feels okay, then just let yourself have a breath or two. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Give the weight of your body down to the ground. And from here, you can either come back to a bit of tilting your knees again, or you can move on to the second side when you're ready. That's nice, so yes. Good. So when you come on to side 2, the same thing, let the knees come down to the other side. So you've got your feet wide as the narrow edge of your mat. Good, you let your knees come down to the other side. You let the legs be as heavy and relaxed as possible. You let your head roll in the opposite direction. And then you let the breath come in, the breath leave you. Good. So let yourself have another breath or so there. And then whenever you want to come out of this position, you can come back to the center with your knees. And then you can fold your knees into your chest. You can have a couple of breaths, sort of quiet breaths there with the knees folded into your chest. You could do a little bit of rocking from side to side. Yes, Sarah, and you can also take your legs up to the ceiling. So there is going to be plenty of, yes, taking the legs up to the ceiling today. So that's obviously when we take our legs up in the heat, it's very nice. So whenever you want to, you can take your arms and legs up towards the ceiling, and that's it. Have a little shake out. Circle your ankles, just that very nice feeling of, yeah. Good. Go into there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to roll over onto one side, and we're going to come and do some sitting things, and these will take us onto our backs again, and we'll also do a little bit of sitting and breathing. So, like I've got into the gloom back here. Let me just see if I can get it to brighten up. That will work. So, come and sit on your mat and lean back onto your arms and just give your legs a little bit of a roll. So I thought we would benefit from the fact that everything is a little bit easier, well, maybe around the pelvis and hip joints. So what we're going to do here is keeping your legs, well, you'll probably find out how wide you want to have them. So keep one leg long and lean onto that arm. And then you're going to bend the other knee and stand that foot on the floor, and your hand's going to be on that knee. And then leaning towards the long leg side of the long leg sort of sit bone side of the pelvis, you're going to rock this other leg. So your hand's on your knee. You can let this knee rock inside and then towards the outside. So obviously you want to have your legs wide enough apart that your knee could come down all the way down to the floor as it comes towards the other leg, if your hip joint wants to move that far. But if your legs are too wide, it's going to be difficult for your leg. If my legs were really wide, it would be harder to do this movement. So you don't want your legs really, really wide, but you want them wide enough that this knee can come down to the floor. So we feel this movement for the hip joint in the bent leg. And make sure you're leaning onto this side, the long leg side of the pelvis, so you've really got this freedom to move this leg externally, internally. And then we'll swap over. So swap legs, lean onto the other arm, lean onto this side of the buttocks. And again, your hand on the other knee. Have enough space between the legs that there's this possibility the knee could rock down towards the floor if it so wishes. And then the knee can also, it's probably, I don't know, at this point, my knee doesn't come all the way to the floor. But it's particularly this internal movement we're exploring here. We're going to be exploring both. So a couple more times. Okay. And then just lengthen that leg out for a moment. Give both legs a little bit of a bounce, a little bit of a shake. And then we're going to bend both knees. And again, have some space between the feet so that we can pretty much do what you were doing on your backs. We can let both knees tilt to the right and to the left. So you've got your feet pretty much that same distance apart. Good. And as you can see, this is going to take us into pinwheels. So when you're ready, from going from side to side, let's stay in pinwheel. If you want to then at that point just adjust your legs so you feel that you're in a comfortable pinwheel position, and then a bit of circling. And just see how it feels. Good. And so you can always do, you can circle with your arms free, give yourself a hug. It might be a little bit hot, possibly, giving yourself a hug in this weather. And then what we're going to do from here is turn, as we usually do, turn towards this knee that's going out to the side and come into our pinwheel forward bend. So folding forwards, seeing how it feels to fold forwards. Sometimes these folding forwards movements can feel a bit heating, but also the settling on the ground can help us to sort of quieten and maybe cool down. So in your pinwheel forward bend, having a few breaths there, just as much as possible settling, feeling the movement of the breath through your body. Very nice. Beautiful. Good. So another couple of breaths here. And then walking your hands in towards you, coming back up. And we're going to come to a little bit more of that rocking of the legs from side to side. So obviously just remember which side you've been in on pinwheel, but that's, I think that's fairly obvious. And just come back to a little bit more of this one, where we're letting the knees rock to the right and to the left. And then in your own time, you're going to stay in your second side of pinwheel and just, adjust your legs as you want to. And do a little bit of circling. So again, it could be with your arms free, it could be giving yourself a hug, letting your head hang. So that's nice, particularly if you're feeling a bit tight or a bit stiff in the shoulders or the neck or the upper back. And circling in both directions here, feeling that the legs and pelvis can settle onto the ground. And then when you're ready, you can come to the pinwheel forward bend. So turning towards this knee that's going out to the side, folding down over that leg, having a few quiet breaths. I'm sorry, I'm just going to grab another tissue. Look at you in pinwheel, very nice. Just 2 or 3 more cycles of breath, letting yourself settle down. And from this side of pinwheel, you can then walk your hands back in towards you. And back onto your arms and lengthen your legs out. So it's up to you now. If you're someone who likes to take their legs wide, you could take them a bit, some of you I know do, Sally in particular, you could take your legs a little bit wider and just have maybe, a few breaths here. We won't stay here particularly long, but so you could be leaning back, if you could have your legs less wide. And for some people, that's actually easier to sit a bit more upright. So sometimes it's helpful just to play around with how wide have you got your legs? Are they the sort of width apart that helps you to sit more upright? And for some people, that's wider, and some people it's a bit narrower. Okay, but from here, we're going to come on into cobbler pose. So you can bring the soles of your feet towards each other. And we'll do a little bit of rocking in cobbler pose to start with. So you can hold on to your ankles or your feet or your big toes and just do a little bit of this rocking from side to side. And see how that feels. So from sit bone to sit bone. And then from here, we'll take this into a little bit of leaning from side to side, so a bit more side bendy. So if we let the legs and pelvis settle down, we can lean into one arm and then we can reach over with the other arm Feel a bit of length through the side of the body. Good. So just a couple more times to each side. Feeling this as much as possible, feeling the legs and pelvis are heavy, and we can feel sort of light from the waist up, maybe. Okay, let's just for a moment before we move on into one more bent leg thing. Take your legs long and wide again, and again just sort of see what width is good for you to take your legs to. How wide? You could try going a bit narrower than you usually do, or you could try maybe not going too wide. Although this is probably the weather, if you were going to try going a little bit wider, this is probably the weather to do it. So what we're going to do from here is come back into pinwheel. So we're going to go back into cobbler, on into pinwheel, and then on into pigeon pose, which it's quite early in a class for us to go into pigeon, but I think because of the heat, I'm thinking it'll probably be fine. So from your wide legs, come back into cobbler pose. Let one knee fall on top of the other knee. Slide this top leg back. And from pinwheel, we're going to move pretty much on into pigeons. So let your top knee come back a little bit. And then you can start to maybe tuck your toes under in your back leg, walk that back leg away behind you, and see how it feels to come into pigeon pose. And I do think this is one of the things that feels quite a bit easier in this heat. So maybe first of all in pigeon, coming down onto your elbows and your forearms and having a few breaths here. And just see how it feels. And of course, there's always these sort of rocking movements we can do in pigeon. We can rock side to side. Now, of course, if your front knee is feeling any pressure, then you roll onto the outside of that. You let the pelvis roll towards the side of the front leg. So your pelvis becomes a bit lopsided. Otherwise, we want to try to feel that our pelvis is level. So yes, there's a little bit of rocking the pelvis from side to side, or there's a little bit of tucking the back toes under and rocking yourself sort of a little bit up and down on your mat. Up and down is towards the front of the mat and back, not towards the ceiling and the floor. You could go lower in your pigeon pose. So if you're someone who likes to bring their forehead down towards the back of the hands or even towards the floor, that's a possibility. So maybe, if that's possible for you, maybe have a few breaths there, resting down in pigeon, feeling the movement of the breath in your body. And I'll just come and have a little look at you. Very beautiful pigeon poses, the bits that I can see. It's very beautiful lighting in everyone's room today. Lovely. And if you're happy there, if you're feeling, so sometimes, you know, in this hot weather, it might mean that we can stay somewhere a little bit longer, just that's where we've sort of arrived and we don't really want to move. But we can stay somewhere a little bit longer and breathe into it. If you feel that you'd like to walk your hands in towards you in pigeon pose and come up a little bit and see how that feels. And all the time, just trying to make sure the shoulders stay as soft and relaxed as possible. Good. And from here, it might be that you're ready to come out of pigeon pose. It might be that you want to come back onto your elbows or your forehead for a couple more breaths. From pigeon pose, we're going to come on into our cow legs. So if you're ready to move out of pigeon pose, you can rock your weight onto your front, that's it, onto the bent leg, the front leg, and swing your other leg around and just see how it feels to be in your cow legs today. So remember, you've got all these options. I think all of you are recently happy in cow legs, aren't you? So you have got all these options where this foot could be standing on the floor, the other side of your knee, or your bottom leg could be up. I'm going to come a little bit nearer just so I can see you a bit better in cow legs. Yes, okay. So want to see those cues of whether you've had enough of cow legs and are desperate to come out. Let me bend my laptop forwards a little bit. So we could do these little side to side rotations in cow legs. So I quite like at the moment these sort of going from one side to the other. So we're feeling heavy below the waist. That's it. And light in the upper body. Now from cow legs in a moment, what I thought is we would just try, so sometimes we do this in real life class, sometimes we'd try just seeing how it feels to go from cow legs towards a half lotus type position. So it's because when you're in cow legs, you've actually gone beyond half lotus. So I'm sorry, I just need to grab my tissue. I think I've got all the windows open onto my front garden, which is making my hay fever worse, as lovely as it is to have the air. Okay, yeah, so even if it's not the most comfortable half lotus in the world, you can touch on to that. And then what we're going to do from here, you might be really relieved to hear, is you're going to slowly lower yourself onto your back. And from here, you're then going to take both legs up to the ceiling and give them a shake out. Give the legs a little bit of a lengthen out. And then we'll just do some very simple leg stretchy things on our backs. So once you've taken both legs to the ceiling, then bring both feet down onto the floor with your knees bent. And then you can take one leg back up towards the ceiling and just see, you know, you can either have your knee bent and your chest close to your thigh, and taking the sole of your foot towards the ceiling, so sort of bent leg stretch, or you can lengthen out your leg and just sort of see where you can catch this leg with your hands. So I'm really keen on these ones at the moment. We're on our back, we're trying to catch our leg with our hands. So if we straighten our knee, we maybe hold around the back of the thigh. If we bend the knee, we can maybe catch the ankle or the big toe or the sides of the foot. And you can then lengthen the bottom leg out on the floor if you want to, and see how that feels. So just have a little play around with that leg up in the air, bending the knee, straightening the knee. Where can you catch your hands onto your leg or your foot? That's nice. And these are just, so Sally, if you were doing a bit of running first thing this morning, these are really nice. So I've been doing a bit of early morning, hot, well, actually doing couch to 5K with my 14-year-old, which is quite amazing. We should never do that. So yes, and then whenever you want to, swapping sides with your legs. So maybe start off with the leg that was up in the air with that knee bent and the foot standing on the floor. So your bottom leg is, the knee is bent to start with. And then you take the other leg up towards the ceiling. You can have your knee bent, you can have your leg straight. Where can you catch around the back of your leg? Where can you catch, if you bend your knee, can you catch your ankle or your foot or your shin? And just keep playing around with what feels nice in that raised leg. If you straighten the leg, you can, and you hold around the back of your thigh, you can really stretch into your heel. That will feel nice, good. Yes, and exactly, whenever you want to, lengthen your bottom leg out on the floor. Good. And then, yes, exactly, if you want to take both legs up to the ceiling, so just before we come off our backs, just whatever you'd like to do, it could be both legs up towards the ceiling, it could be both legs long on the floor, or it could be something of your own invention and choice. Just enjoying this little chance to lie our backs. And then in a moment, we'll be rolling over, trying to remember which side we need to go into for pinwheel and pigeon. Hopefully that won't be too tricky. But yes, might be nice if you haven't stretched out both legs on the floor to do that just for a couple of breaths. Before we come back over. So if you've lengthened out both legs, let another cycle of breath move through you, and then you can fold your knees into your chest, roll onto your side, and come back over into cobbler pose. And then we're going to move through all those movements. I have to adjust my laptop a little bit, but it's fine for the moment. So from cobbler pose, hopefully remembering which side of pinwheel you did into pigeon. So letting your knees come over, stack your knees, coming into the second side of pinwheel, and then pretty much straight away coming on into pigeon. So yes, you should be facing the opposite side of your room and your mat, and then you'll know you're in the other side of pigeon. So in your pigeon pose, make sure your front knee is happy for you to let your pelvis become level. Otherwise, keep your pelvis at an angle. Come down onto your forearms, any little rocking movements you'd like to do. Think about how does it feel to settle into side 2 of pigeon. And it might be from here, if you feel happy that you're ready to fold down, take your forehead towards the floor, towards the back of your hands. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. So again, in this warm weather, if you are happy, folded all the way down in pigeon pose, it can be quite a helpful place to be. And it might feel, it might feel easier than at some other times. But again, feel free to keep rocking, to explore coming up onto your hands or stay on your elbows. So wherever it feels good for you, helpful for you, tolerable for you to be in pigeon pose right now. Again, it's nice if we can, in this hot weather, find a place where we can settle without breathing. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave us. And another few breaths in pigeon pose. If you haven't tried coming up onto your hands and you want to, this might be a good time now. So walking your hands in towards you, keeping settled through the pelvis. Sometimes when I come onto my hands, I like to tuck my back toe under. Just helps me to settle a bit more through the pelvis, and then tuck it under and then release it. A couple of breaths here, letting the shoulders stay soft. And from here, from this upwards pigeon, we're going to roll out. A pigeon roll onto that front leg, hip, and then swing the back leg around into our cow legs. Just forwards in cow legs. So again, depending how it feels on this second side, we've got these options. We've got this option here, standing the foot. We've got the lengthening the bottom leg out option, if that bottom knee isn't happy. And then we can do a little bit of a wiggle in cow legs. So like with all these sitting things, it's like, can we let the legs be heavy and the upper body be light? We can start to turn. So possibly in this hot weather, it's a bit easier to feel heavy below the waist, because maybe everything feels a bit sort of heavy and languid. So from side to side, if you like. Nice. And we'll be doing the same thing from here we did on the other side. So in a moment, we'll be moving on into seeing how it feels to come towards a half lotus and then rolling onto your backs. So from here, if you're happy in cow and you want to stay a little bit longer, by all means, I don't want to hurry you out of cow. But if from here, so it's this feeling that we've got this top leg is crossed beyond the bottom leg, and actually for half lotus, so Do you need to be let in, Cam? No, no, Cam's just taken Otto out and is distracting me from the front garden. So you can slide that top leg across towards a half lotus and just sort of see how that feels. So it's almost like we're going backwards into half lotus, so maybe it doesn't feel quite so challenging. And then from here, like we did on the other side, you're going to lean back. You can keep your legs in your half lotus as you roll back onto your back. You could even reach around the outside of one leg and catch your bottom foot. But also, whenever you're ready, you're going to release your legs and take them up to the ceiling and give them a little bit of a shake out. And this time on your back, you could revisit a little bit of those leg stretches, but I was also thinking you could do a little bit of your happy baby rocking, because we're going to be coming over and doing some sitting and breathing with the cooling breaths, sitali, which I only ever teach when it's this hot, but that is actually cooling. So yes, if you wanted to do some happy baby rocking, you can take your knees wider apart, knees bent, soles of the feet orientated towards the ceiling. You can catch onto, yes, that's it, you can catch onto your feet or your ankles or your big toes. So you can rock with your legs quite passive, or you can reach into one foot and then the other to get yourself to rock across your back. And you can obviously reach into the foot that's coming to the center or the foot that's going out to the side. If you reach into the foot that's going out to the side, you're more likely to roll over onto your side. But hey, you've all got quite a lot of space from the look of it. So you're okay. Good. Very nice. And then again, maybe just give yourself a few quiet breaths. It could be with your knees bent, your feet standing on the floor. It could be with your legs long. So we're going to, in a moment, we're going to come over and we're going to find a comfortable sitting position, and we're going to do a little bit of this sitali, this cooling breath. A very hot dog who's curled up in the corner of the room, trying to cool down. Bless him. So yes, that's it. A few quiet breaths on your back, and then you can be making your way over into a comfortable sitting position. So we'll check Otto's okay. Is Otto okay, love? He seems very panty. Sorry, I was just checking on Otto. It seems very hot. I think I should do the cool cloths thing, Rosie. But okay, so we're going to be doing so this sitali breathing. I'm just going to grab my tissue in case I get another hay fever incident. We're going to be doing this cooling breath where we breathe, and some of you may know this. I only ever teach it when it's the weather's like this. And I remember when I was doing my yoga teacher training, and we some really bad reason we were practicing it in the winter, and I got a sore throat. So it has to be in the high 20s now for me to do it. But it is really cooling. So if you're someone who can roll their tongue, which I can't, so roll the edges of your tongue in. At some point we will, in this breath, you will roll your tongue, you'll suck the air up the surface of your tongue. I can't roll my tongue, so I just stick my tongue out and suck the air up. So if you can't roll your tongue like me, it doesn't really matter, but I'm sure if you can roll your tongue, it makes it even better. So just settling in sitting, and I'll talk us into maybe five or so cycles of this breathing. So where you are in sitting, you're going to just let a normal cycle of breath come through. So breathing through your nostrils, feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then let another breath come in. And as you exhale, you're going to start to exhale and take your head up. So you're still breathing through your nostrils. I might just go side on, but you're going to let your head come up a little bit as you exhale through your nostrils. At the end of your out breath, you're going to then stick your tongue out, rolling it if you can, and you're going to suck your in breath up across the surface of your tongue. A little bit of noise. And then you're going to close your mouth. And if you can, if you want to, you can touch the underside of your tongue to the roof of your mouth. And as you exhale, let your head fall forward, come down and forwards. And then as you breathe in, bring your head back to normal. So I'm going to talk you through that a couple more times. So let a breath come in just with your head here in neutral. And then as you exhale, you breathe out through your nostrils, your head comes up a little. And then as you breathe in, that's when you open your mouth, you stick your tongue out. You suck the air across the surface of your tongue, and then you close your mouth. If you like, you can touch the underside of your tongue to the roof of your mouth, and you exhale, letting your head come forwards and down. So again, breathe in, bring your head back up to neutral. Exhale, start to let your head come up a little bit. At the end of that out breath, you stick your tongue out between your lips, you roll it if you can, you suck the air up across the surface of your tongue. And then you close your mouth, you exhale through your nostrils, letting your head come back to normal and then fall forwards a little bit. Then you breathe in, bring your head back to neutral. So we'll do this a couple more times. Exhaling, let the head come up. End of the out breath, stick your tongue out, roll it if you can, suck the air up across the surface of the tongue. Then closing the lips, exhaling through the nose. Let the head come forwards and then down a little bit. And then as you breathe in, bring your head back to neutral. So one last time, letting the breath leave you as you exhale, your head comes up. As you breathe in, sticking your tongue out, rolling it if you can, sucking the air up across the surface of the tongue. And then closing the lips, exhaling through the nose, letting your head fall forwards. And then breathing in, bringing your head back to neutral. And just have a couple of quiet cycles of breath there. I do find this breathing very effective and actually very cooling in this hot weather, so I hope you do too. And we're going to come on to now onto hands and knees and doing a few hands and knees things, but we'll just take it slowly if you do feel hot. Sorry, let's have to look at what we're doing now. Yes, we're not doing a huge amount here. So we're going to come on to hands and knees and we're going to do some cat movements. So just settling yourself on hands and knees, feeling your hands on the floor beneath your shoulders, your knees on the floor beneath your hips. Come on to some cat movements, so rounding your back to the ceiling, dipping your spine down to the floor. And seeing how those movements feel in your body. So we're perhaps coming on to these a little bit later than we often do in class. You can also add in some tail wagging movements. So particularly if you feel that's what your back would benefit from today. Sometimes if my lower back's feeling tight, so those tail wagging movements are really helpful. And then whenever you're ready in your own time, you can do some more cats, some more tail wagging. But whenever you're ready in your own time, you can do a couple of dog poses and just see how those dog poses feel. So you can be tucking your toes under, rocking your hips back over your heels, coming up into dog pose. And Having a few breaths in dog. So yes, I will come and have a look at you. So a couple of dog poses, seeing how dog feels. Good. That's very nice. You can be bending one knee, bending the other, you know, all these things you can do, letting your head go. Good. And it might be that you just feel that you want to stay in one long dog pose. If that feels quite settled, or it might be that you want to come down and try a second dog pose. Yes, when you come down, you could either have a couple of breaths in child pose or kneeling, or come and do a little bit more hands and knees, rounding and dipping in cat, or a little bit of tail wagging. Yes, yes, and when you've done a second, so do come into a second dog pose in your own time. That's nice, lovely. And just seeing how does it feel to be in dog pose today. So it might be that your hands are a bit sort of sweatier than usual. Again, you know, how do the back of the legs feel? How do the shoulders feel? And you can stay as long in this dog pose as you like. But from this dog, we're going to fold down into child pose. And then you're going to just lie onto your belly for a few breaths. So if you like lying on your belly, you might want to go straight onto your belly. And just see how it feels. Lovely. So lie on your belly and have I would probably tend to have one hand on top of the other and my forehead or my cheek resting on the back of the hands, but it doesn't matter because we're just going to lie here and have a few breaths. So you could give your pelvis a wiggle to start with. So if you're not on your belly now, maybe make your way onto your belly. That's it, Sally. And Rosie, good. And just, how does it feel to lie on the belly? How does it feel to bring your awareness to your breathing? Where do you feel your breath in your body? And I often find it, I always find it helpful if I'm lying on my belly to focus on the feeling of the breath in the back of the body. We've got this whole lung capacity, more lung capacity apparently in the back of our body, the back of the rib cage than the front. So there's a huge amount of space here that can expand with the inhalation and contract with the exhalation. So if you're happy on your belly, have a few more cycles of breath. What we're going to do from here is you can fold going through dog pose and just coming onto hands and knees, through child pose, coming onto hands and knees. We're going to be moving through dog pose, through a forward bend, up into standing. I'm just slightly concerned it's a bit hot. Okay, so yes, sorry, I was just trying to get a cool tea towel for Otto. So yes, dog pose, forward bend, up into standing in your own time. Yes, drink of water, Francis. That sounds like a good idea. maybe a bit of a hot dog. So yes, so arriving in standing, and we're going to, I think our first thing, we're going to just settle in standing. So the first, and we're going to sort of take it quite easy, it's quite slow, and we're going to do some standing balances. So I was finding cooling in this weather. So first of all, having a look at your feet hip width apart and parallel. And then a little, just a little bit of swaying from side to side with your eyes open or closed. So we're dropping our awareness down into our feet. As we rock our weight from side to side, we feel the weight shift into one foot and then the other. And specifically, we feel the weight shift towards the outer edge of the foot. A little bit more swaying from side to side. And then we're going to do a little bit of rocking our weight forwards and back along the length of our footprints. And then we could put these two things together. So we're circling over our feet. Okay, so Otto is now running away from being sprayed with the water bottle. So sorry about this distraction, everyone, but he's now hidden under the sofa. So, he's come out the other side. It's like a comedy here. So yes, a little bit of circling over your footprints. So you can circle one way. It's quite good to do this with your eyes closed, so you can circle one way. So when you're circling, your weight comes forwards to the side, to the back, to the other side, forwards to the side, to the back, to the other side. And then you can circle back the other way a couple of times. Forwards, side, back into the heels, to the other outer edge of the foot. Balls of the feet, side, back. And just from this circling, just see if we can settle down in standing. So the circle perhaps becomes, or the movements become smaller and smaller. And that's it, we'll just settle down into standing. And the first thing we're going to do in standing is just a very sort of quiet coming into tree pose. So you can very much choose which tree pose you want to do. So where you're going to start with, you can choose which foot you're going to stand on. So you can maybe do a little bit of just coming back to rocking from side to side. And then once you've made that choice about which foot you're going to stand on, it's then where you're going to take the other foot. Ankle, maybe your heel just above your knee, maybe if you want to use your hand and bring your foot further up onto your thigh. And then you can bring your hands into prayer pose in front of your chest. So there's something hopefully settling and reassuring about coming into the familiarity of tree pose. And if we're having a day where we're a bit more wobbly, keeping the hands in prayer pose at the chest, if you're feeling reasonably steady, you could bring your arms up. The shoulders stay heavy and relaxed. See if you can gather your awareness back into your breathing, just as we did when you were lying on your belly. Feeling the movement of the breath somewhere in your body. Make sure your jaw is relaxed. You might gather your hands back into your chest, back into prayer pose. Make sure your jaw's relaxed, your shoulders are soft. You can come back down whenever you're ready, a little shake out. So in these few standing balances we're going to do, the intention is just to be, can we settle and breathe in a standing balance in the way that perhaps we can in child pose or lying on our belly or back. So slowly making your way onto side two. So again, wherever you're going to bring your foot onto your inner leg, hands gathering into prayer pose at your chest, at the breastbone. And just settle here, see if you can make contact with your breathing. Most important is releasing tension, softening the shoulders, relaxing the jaw. The arms come up, soft in the center of the palms, alive into the fingertips. If you can feel the flow of your breath somewhere within you, and stay with the flow of your breath in an easy, effortless way. Good. Another breath or two, or Sally, perhaps a couple of extra breaths as you came into tree pose a little bit later than some of the others. Feel ready coming down, a bit of a shake out of arms and legs. And you're going to fold or roll down rather into a forward bend. So settling your feet on the floor, rolling down into a forward bend, bending your knees a little or a lot, and perhaps staying in that forward bend for a few extra breaths, perhaps slightly longer than we do sometimes. Again, this sense we arrive in our forward bend, we find our breath, we feel our breath for 2 or 3 cycles. And then on an exhalation, rolling back up into standing slowly when you're ready. So I think when we're in standing, it's the time to have plenty of drinks of water. So make sure you do in between our balances. So we're going to, in a moment, come on into our, I always think, I call it sometimes stalk, sometimes dancer. There's so many different variations of it. So we'll come into a sort of a simple one and then a slightly, let's say, more involved one. So whichever foot you stood on first for tree pose, you're going to reach that arm up and you're going to start to shift your weight onto that leg and foot. And we come up onto the ball of the other foot, and then we're just going to catch the top of that foot. But quite quiet here, simple, bringing our hand down onto our breastbone. Letting the bent knee drop towards the floor. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. Just how does it feel to settle here, to breathe, to feel yourself in this little balance? So another cycle or 2 of breath if you can. Very nice, coming back down when you're ready. Having a little shake out of arms and legs, and we do the same thing on the other side. So reaching up through the other arm now, we're shifting our weight onto side 2. We can let the heel of the foot come away, then the ball of the foot. You have a breath or so. Taking the arm up, and then the hand can come down onto the breastbone. Sorry, Otto is now trying to make silly noises, drying himself off. So letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. You can settle, feel your breath in the standing balance. letting the bent knee drop towards the floor. Whenever you're ready, yes, come down and have a little shake out. So we're going to, maybe if you just watch for a moment, we're going to come into another version of that balance, but we're going to almost do it more as a little sequence of movements. So this time, stop. This time we're going to be walking forwards on the mat. So what we're going to do, if I just show you, is we're going to step forwards. As we step forwards, we're going to catch the other foot. And then we're going to reach our arm forwards and our foot back. So we're stepping, we're catching, we're reaching. So come onto your mat so you've got a bit of space in front of you so you can step forwards. Again, you're going to step forwards with the foot that you've been standing on first, if you can remember. If you can't, don't worry. So from here, let a breath come in. As you exhale, you can step. You can shift your weight into that front foot, catch your back foot, and then reach forwards with your arm, backwards with your foot. And just have a few breaths there. And then coming back to the centre, letting your foot come back onto the ground. So you're back in this stepped forwards position. And then bending your front knee, let yourself fold forwards over your front leg. Give your arms, give your head down to the floor. You could just be resting your forearms on that bent front knee, but if you like, you can rest your forearms on the bent front knee, or you can let yourself fold all the way down to the ground. So taking your hands down towards the floor and resting your chest on your front thigh. So it's up to you. Good. Okay. And then from there, let a breath come in, and as you exhale, sink down into your feet, come back up into standing. And then we're going to do that whole little sequence on the other side. So come back into standing. Let a breath come in. So as we exhale, we're going to step the other foot forwards. We're going to let our weight come into that foot as we catch the back foot. And then we're reaching forwards with the arm, backwards with the foot, away from our bottom. And we're having a few breaths here. And then from here, you're releasing, you're coming back to the centre, you're releasing your back foot down onto the floor, letting the front knee bend, and then folding forwards, either resting your forearms, your hands on that front leg, or folding forward so your chest comes close to that front leg thigh. And have a couple of breaths there. And then this time you can step your back in your forward bend still, step your back leg forwards so you come into a forward bend with both feet side by side. And just have a couple more breaths there, folded forwards. Silly boy. Good. So if you're in your forward bend and you haven't stepped your back foot forward, step your back foot forward so your feet are side by side. And then let a breath come in, sink down into your feet, roll back up into standing. And have a little shake out. Then we're going to come, I think, yes, from the back of our mats, we're going to come down onto the floor, do a couple more hands and knees things before we make our way onto into a bit more lying. So if you come to the back of your mats and, so you've got the mat facing you, so we can go down through, we're going to be in a moment going down through a forward bend, dog pose, and then walking a bit further into plank pose. But we're going to start off with our hands in prayer pose. So we move into this as we would for sun salute. And we're going to take up in a moment, we're going to take our arms down and then up, and we can do a little back arch here if we like. So with the hands at the breastbone, letting a breath come in. As you exhale, take your arms down and then up. You can let your gaze come up and your pelvis come forwards and a little standing back arch. And then you can curl all the way forwards into a forward bend. And have a couple of cycles of breath in your forward bend, feeling the heels rooting down into the ground. You can bend your knees as much as you like. And then from your forward bend, you're going to start to walk your hands forwards into dog pose. So walk your hands into what feels a good length for dog pose, and have again perhaps a couple of cycles of breath here. You can bend both knees, you can bend one knee at a time. And then when you've had a couple of cycles in dog pose, you can walk your hands a little bit further forwards into a long dog, and then see from there if you can rock forwards into plank. And again, can you have a cycle, maybe a cycle of breath in plank pose, or two. And then let your knees come down onto the floor. Keep your toes tucked, rock your hips back over your heels. So we've rocked back, we can touch our forehead onto the floor, but keep the elbows off the floor, because from here, we're then going to round our back and travel forwards into face up dog. So let a breath come in, and as you exhale, round your back to the ceiling. Travel forwards into face up dog. And from your face up dog, then fold back into child pose, or kneeling if you prefer. And just take the weight off your hands and wrists. And we're going to repeat. We're going to repeat a sort of variation of that without coming into standing a couple more times before we lie down. So from child pose or kneeling, you're going to come back onto hands and knees and towards the front of the mat, so we can come back into plank pose again. So starting point now is on hands and knees, shoulders over the wrists, lengthening one leg back and the other into plank pose. Having a breath or two in plank pose. And then from plank pose, letting the knees come down onto the floor. Fold, keeping the toes tucked, rocking the hips back over the heels. And then from this rocked back position, we're going to round our back to the ceiling. Rock forwards, so we're coming forwards into face up dog. Breaths again from face up dog. Fold back into child pose or kneeling. We're going to do that one last time, and then we're going to be coming to lie on our backs. So just a breath or two, a couple of breaths in child pose or kneeling, taking the weight off the hands. And then one last time, when you're ready, towards the front of your mat, coming onto hands and knees, settling your shoulders over your wrists. We're going to come into one last plank pose. So lengthening one leg back and then the other. Having perhaps a couple of cycles of breath in plank pose, not the easiest place to breathe in. From plank pose, letting the knees come down to the floor, keeping the toes tucked under, rocking the hips back over the heels. Letting a breath come in here and then rounding your back to the ceiling. Traveling forwards, bringing the pelvis forwards into face up dog, untucking your toes, bringing the shoulders down away from your ears. And then from here, you can fold into, well, you can then make your way down and lie onto your back. And just, yes, let yourself settle on your back. Wow, Mabel's looking so grown up. This is Sarah's dog, amazing. Oh, bless her, so cute. Oh, so yes, lying down onto your backs and just letting yourselves cool down and settle down. We are going to be doing a bit more movement. It's not quite time just to lie down. Settling down onto your back and coming back to this feeling of the breath moving in the body, noticing where you feel your breathing, noticing how it feels. You might like to come back to letting your head roll from side to side, so easing your head from the right to the left. And from letting your head roll to the right and to the left, finding a comfortable place to settle the centre of the back of your head on the floor. And if your legs are long, you can bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And then revisit that movement of tilting your knees to the right and to the left. So good, yes, bending the knees, tilting the knees to the right and to the left. And just seeing how that feels now. And we're then going to come onto our sides and do, yes, that's it. So just a little bit more tilting of your knees on your back. I think everyone froze for a moment. And then from there, we're going to come onto our sides and we're going to do a floor twist from our sides. So if you're more comfortable with a cushion under the side of your head, so sometimes in this one, it's nice to have a cushion when we start off, but not once we roll onto our back. So it's up to you. If you want to put a cushion under the side of your head to start with, do so. So that's it. Very nice, Sally. Organize yourself on your side with your knees bent. So bend your knees at a right angle to yourself. That's it. And have your both arms in front of you, just resting in an easy way on the floor. And just let yourself settle. So let both elbows bend, perhaps. We're going to keep the arms very relaxed. And just let yourself settle on your side. And have a couple of cycles of breath here, just arriving. And then when you're ready, the movement is that starting from being on the side of the head to rolling towards the back of the head. So rolling from the side of your head towards the back of your head and letting your top shoulder follow and letting your top arm follow. So we start from the side of the head, we roll towards the back of the head. We let the top shoulder move back. we let that top arm just sort of slide across the top of our body. So we're trying to very much let the arms follow what's happening with the head and the shoulder. And it might well also be that your top knee starts to slide back a little bit on the bottom thigh, and that's fine. And so it's probably helpful in these to roll in and out a few times, just sort of seeing where does that top shoulder get to in relation to the floor behind you. And because it's nice to come and stay in this floor twist, it might be that you need to let your top knee lift up away from the bottom knee. And at this point, you might want to remove the cushion from under your head and put it between your knees so that you can let your top shoulder come onto the floor behind you, and you can stay there for a few breaths. But it's also fine just to let that top knee come up. And it's also fine to move in and out of this if you prefer. So really whatever feels good, whatever feels helpful at this moment. It could be staying in the floor twist for a few breaths, or it could be moving in and out of it. So when we're in the floor twist, there's this feeling of sort of openness across the front of the chest. Maybe when we're breathing, we feel the movement and the breath of the breath in this upper part of the chest more. We're just letting the legs be as heavy as possible on the floor. You can have a couple more cycles of breath here. Whenever you've had enough on this side, we're going to roll onto our backs and just have a couple of cycles of breath on our back before we go on to side 2. So come back onto your back, just settle there for a moment. Yes, it might be quite nice to let the legs lengthen out when you come onto your back if you're comfortable to lie with your legs long. Feel the length of yourself in contact with the floor. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. So, yes, that's a nice idea, Sally, to roll your head from side to side on your back, to ease out your neck. And so whenever you're ready, you can make your way onto side 2. And again, remember, if you like, have a cushion under the side of your head, and that cushion can always then be put between your knees when you end up on your back. So take a bit of time to settle yourself on your side with your knees bent at a right angle to your body, your arms very relaxed out in front of you, so elbows bent. You don't need to try and stretch your arms forwards. We're just going to try and settle here. You don't have to have a cushion under the side of your head. It can be very good for the neck to have that when you're resting on your side and your head is touching the floor, it brings a side bend into your neck, which can be very helpful. So whenever you feel settled, you can then start that movement of rolling from the side of your head towards the back of your head. That's it. So you roll from the side of the head towards the back of your head. You just start to let your top shoulders going to start to move back. And you can then sort of let that top arm follow. So the bottom arm just stays heavy and quiet on the floor. The top arm can sort of slide across the top of your body. So keeping that top arm as relaxed as possible, as much contact with the body as possible. And you can maybe come in and out of the twist a few times, 2, 3 times. And then if you like, if it feels comfortable, stay in the twist. If you had a cushion under your head, you might want to remove it at that point. And it might be that your top knee needs to come away from the bottom knee or slide back on the bottom thigh to enable you to bring your back shoulder comfortably onto the floor behind you. So that's fine to let that top knee come up as much as it wants to, if indeed it does. And then let yourself settle in the twist. Let the breath move through you. giving the weight of your body down to the floor. And again, noticing where you feel your breath in your body, possibly a little bit more in the upper part of the chest because the bottom ribs are a bit more constrained by the movement of the twist. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. And you can have another couple of breaths in the floor twist. You can also, whenever you're ready, make your way back onto your back. Yes, and when you come onto your back, just lie, do whatever you want to do for a moment. So whether it's, legs long, knees bent, that's it, Francis, legs up to the ceiling. And we're going to revisit in a moment something from last week, which doesn't matter if you weren't here, but it's a sequence with bridge pose where we move into bridge pose with, in a sequence, moving without breath. And it's both a movement and it's both a breathing exercise. So I thought it would be nice to revisit. And I think it's quite calming. So what might be helpful to do to start with is, once you've done whatever you want to do on your backs, is then to bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And then just do a little bit of tilting your pelvis. So where you tip your pelvis towards your head and away from your head. You feel your lower back flatten out and your lower back arch. So just a little bit of how does that movement feel in your body? And from this tilting of your pelvis, you can then, usually when we flatten out the lower back, isn't it, and tip the tailbone off the floor, we then move on into bridge pose. So perhaps just once or twice in your own time, see how it feels to move up and down into bridge pose. And just keeping it easy, keeping it relaxed. Very nice. Okay, we've done a couple of bridge poses. Just settle your pelvis onto the floor. If you want to fold your knees into your chest for a moment, you can. And there's just one more little thing I want us to try before we come into this sequence. So once you've folded your knees into your chest, if you want to, then bring your feet back to the floor. And then the other thing I'd like you to try is, just in this sequence, we bring the arms to rest on the floor either side of the head. And I'd just like you to find a place where you can bring your arms so that they rest onto the floor. So, I mean, for some of you, it's going to vary how near to your head or how far away they come, but you want the arms to be able to rest down. So just, bring your arms up, see if you can find a place where the arms can rest. And then that's the place you're going to bring your arms to when you do this sequence. And then you're going to bring your hands onto your belly, so low onto your belly. So this is a starting point. Our hands start and they finish on the belly. And we've talked about this a few weeks ago, the sort of belly as the center of ourselves, the sort of the hara. So it's this idea of gathering our energy and our awareness way down into the belly. So we're going to be moving on the out breath. So here, let a breath come in with your hands on your belly. And then as you exhale, bring your arms up to rest in that place, either side of your head where they just were. And then receive an inhalation there, feeling wide across the front of your chest. And with your next exhalation, you're going to sink into your footprints and let your spine come up into bridge pose. And again, when you're in your bridge pose, then receiving your in-breath, again feeling wide in the rib cage and the chest. And then as you exhale, placing your spine back down onto the floor. As the back of your pelvis touches the ground, you receive an inhalation. And then as you exhale, you bring your hands back down onto your belly. So receive an inhalation. And then with your next exhalation, bring your arms to rest on the floor either side of your head. Let the breath come in here, feel very wide across the front of your chest. And then as you exhale down into your footprints, up into your little bridge pose. And once you're in bridge pose again, receiving the inhalation, feeling wide in the ribs and the chest. As you exhale, placing your spine back down onto the floor, vertebrae by vertebrae. As the back of your pelvis touches the ground, you receive an inhalation, feeling very wide across the back of your pelvis. And then as you exhale, you bring your hands onto your belly. And then receive an inhalation with your hands on your belly. And then as you exhale, bring your arms back to rest on the floor either side of your head. And then as you exhale, sink into your feet. Let your pelvis come up into bridge pose. If you receive an inhalation in bridge pose, feeling wide in the ribs and the chest. And then as you exhale, placing your spine back down onto the floor, vertebrae by vertebrae. As the pelvis rests on the ground, receive an inhalation, feeling wide across the back of the pelvis. And then as you exhale, hands back onto your belly. I'd like you to do that 3 more times. If you know what you're doing, then just carry on your own 3 more times, but I will talk you through once more. So receive an inhalation with your hands on your belly. Exhale, take your arms up to rest on the floor, either side of your head, and receive an inhalation there. And then as you exhale down into your footprints, coming up into bridge pose. And once you're in bridge pose, receiving an inhalation, feeling wide in the ribs and the chest. Then as the next out breath leaves you, placing your spine back down onto the floor, vertebrae by vertebrae. As the pelvis touches the ground, receive an in-breath. And as you exhale, bring your hands back onto your belly. And just see if you can do that twice more on your own. And it doesn't matter if you get confused, but it's nice to try and work with your own breath length. So remember that we're moving with each out breath and we're receiving the inhalation, feeling the width and the spaciousness that comes with the in-breath. Very nice, looks beautiful. It's taking your time. When you have done 2 of those. You can finish folding your knees into your chest, so I know that you've finished. Good. So we're just going to, yes, if you've folded your knees into your chest and you want to take your legs up towards the ceiling, you can give them a little bit of a shake out. And then we're just going to settle down quietly for a couple of minutes. So letting yourself rest down onto the floor. Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave you. And as you're lying there, you can be aware of the flow of the breath through your body. You can be aware of the ground beneath the back of your body. Feeling of the air on your skin. Aware of sounds around you, both near and more distant, both natural and less natural. The light, the presence of other people and animals. Just take your time to stop recording.